Your event is starting live. 3, 2, 1. I think we're live here. And I have such a tickle in my throat all of a sudden. It's terrible. Just give me a moment. So the drawback of live video is that your throat knows when you're about to start, at least if you're from my family. My dad has the same thing, and he does a lot of public speaking. And he does a lot of, I think it's actually a mental thing where your throat starts to tickle as soon as you know people are listening. Yeah, anyhow, so we'll get through it with lots of water. Welcome to Prep Week. This is the week before Watercolor Mastery, and this is our first time doing a Prep Week broadcast, and taking that time to prepare as potential as registered mastery students ready to get started. And one of the reasons, well, there's really just one reason I wanted to do this, and it's just in that word preparation. I wanted you to be prepared to start even now adopting the mindset that you need to become a watercolor master and to do well and really get the most out of, do well isn't the right word, but to get the most out of the Watercolor Mastery course. So as we join up here, and if you're watching live, welcome. I see people checking in from all over the world. I have brand new students who are taking the course for the first time and Watercolor Mastery alumni. And if you're an alumni, why don't you just say so in the chat? Pop your hand up, say hello, and mention that you're going through the course again. I give a free do-over to anybody who's taken Watercolor Mastery previously. If you felt like maybe you ran out of time to go through all the lessons, or life just happened and you weren't able to do the course justice, or if you just know that you're going to get a little bit more out of it the second time around, have a richer experience as you've grown your skills. And every time we grow as artists, we're able to get more out of learning content and get into it a little bit deeper. So I want to welcome my Mastery alumni. The other thing that I love having alumni here in the course, because you get to also help guide and train our new students. And through your example of positivity, of that empowered creative mindset, you can really help encourage these students to pattern their thinking and thought process to that mastery mindset by demonstrating it yourself based on where you're at and what you've learned. So here we are getting ready to start Watercolor Mastery, and I get a lot of questions about supplies. So we're going to be talking about that in this video. But before we do that, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about basically the two main focuses of Watercolor Mastery. And these are really important to me. And just recently, I'm always learning how to teach better and how to explain things better. And just recently, I realized that yes, you can divide the course into basically two sections, and we alternate between the two themes of work and play. And as I was thinking about work and play, I was thinking about how we tend to have a very work-oriented mindset. I'm a goal setter. I love being able to write that list in the morning of the things I want to achieve that day or that week or that month, and then check things off. And I will, if I've completed jobs that weren't on the list, I'll write them down just so I can check them off as well. It gives you that feeling of satisfaction. We like that, that kind of process. And having these markers to see what we've done and how far we've come is really feels good. It really feels like an accomplishment. And we like having goals to work towards. We love saying you do step 1 and you get to step 2 and then you go to step 3. And if you just do everything in this straight line, you know, you'll get there. And my husband and I, we just came back from a road trip to Arizona. We spent time in Arizona. I taught a 2-day workshop in Prescott. we drove all over the state, actually. We got further and further south looking for some warm weather. And then we drove up to Utah and spent a few days, almost a week, in St. George, which is another beautiful part of the US. And I love visiting new places and seeing scenery. And I told my husband my goal for the trip was to see great scenery and eat good food. That would make the trip a success for me. And we did those things. And it was great. But we did not stick to the interstate. And when you're on a road trip and you want to see things, it's not about getting from point A to point B as fast as possible. We want to see the countryside. And our very best days were the ones where we got off the main highway and rambled through back roads and saw things that we wouldn't have seen if we'd been blasting down the interstate with semis on each side of our car. And I think we can compare that to watercolor. We're doing something that's very creative, and we want to be creative. So if you are approaching watercolor as a point A to point B and how do I get there the fastest kind of mindset, you're going to miss so much that will create a rich and full experience for you as an artist that will add multidimensional layers to your creative process and to your paintings. And so we want to do the work that helps us have skill in watercolor, but you also need to play. And this is where the creativity comes in. And when we get better at networking between the two, when we master some skills, and then when we tap into our creativity and we bring them together and we're able to make connections so that you're putting paint down with skill, but you're listening to your creativity say, but what if we tried this? That is where your personal style comes out and you really start to master watercolor and create paintings that are alive and breathing. I like to think about my creativity as not a destination. It's not, like I said, we're not on a road trip, consulting a map, turning right and left to calculate our distance, and then we see creativity high up on the hill. The source of all our creativity is just way up there, and we just have to get to that place. The other thing creativity is we're not in this dark forest turning over rocks and logs looking for this elusive creature that has never really been seen clearly, like Bigfoot. It's this mystical, mythic legend that, we don't even really know if it exists, but we're gonna look, just in case we might stumble upon it. And I think tend to think of creativity as one of those two things. Creativity for me, as I've learned to be a more creative artist, and I'm talking about creativity as a means of expressing who you are. I don't need a map like a road trip, and I don't need a flashlight like I'm looking for something lost in the forest. Creativity is both near and far. It's both unseen and invisible and seen, something you can see and see in paintings, for example. It's close enough to touch, and yet it's too elusive for us to grasp onto it. It's like trying to hold water, it just slips through your fingers. I like to imagine my creativity like a wild critter in a cozy little nest. It comes out to play, but only when I'm not looking directly at it. So I'm here in my studio today, and let me see if I can show you some of what I am surrounded by. It's a little bit of chaos. Okay, so I just got back from my trip, so that's the other part. Don't judge me. But this table, there is like almost zero open space on it. I need to go through and put away some stuff. But here, there's one of the reasons I have chaos all over is that I need to have places for creativity to jump out at me. And so if it's this elusive critter that I can't look directly at, then I need to kind of sneak up on it. And so we're going to be talking about that and looking at that in Watercolor Mastery. If I try to hold my creativity, if I'm painting and doing a warm-up and I can feel the flow starting to happen, and then I just jump on it and attack it, it's not going to continue to do those things that I want it to do. It's going to panic and disappear. If I try to tame my creativity, it's going to lose the qualities that make it unique. Creativity isn't, I always do things this way, and then I get this wonderful creative result. You have to be kind of sneaky about it. It's a wild creature. And if we harness it and try to guide it, it's not going to move. It's stubborn like a donkey. No offense to donkeys. I've been reading a little bit lately about studies done on the brain and in decision making, and it's really interesting, and it's way over my head, but from what I'm understanding is that when we're making decisions, we rely on networks between the different parts of our brain to weigh our options and to guide our decisions and to choose and implement the ideas that we use. And we have a default mode. Our brain has a default mode, and that's the place where ideas are generated. Default mode is kind of what happens when you're daydreaming or when you're letting your mind wander, when you're bored. The different, when your mind is at rest and things can kind of float and swim around in your brain. We have an executive control network, and that network evaluates those ideas. And then we have something called a salient network that is the communication between the first two. It actually decides which ideas from the default network to show to the executive control network. That's what I've been reading anyhow, and I think it's really interesting. Creativity comes as a result of how well our different brain networks communicate with each other. And making art is a really effective way of training our brains to think creatively. There are so many misconceptions about creativity out there. So many people will say, I'm not creative, and yet they're capable of great and wonderful ideas. It's just, we need to train ourselves to encourage that interaction between the different brain networks. My teenagers are learning that when they take a break after doing homework or practicing their musical instruments for a long period of time, it really helps them to take a break. They start to get frustrated as they're working for a long time on one project. And I'll say to them, take a break, go have a snack, go exercise, do something, get your body moving for a few minutes, and then come back and to finish your task. And they're like, Mom, no, I won't have time to finish my job. They're teenagers. Everything I say is wrong. And, but yet I see it every time. They take that break, they come back, they're refreshed. Something that was jamming up in their head before they took that break, suddenly it's there for them and they can complete the task so much more smoothly. And I think that this is because when they take that break, they're activating their default mode as they step away. And it gives the brain networks that chance to communicate. We have to give them space to communicate with each other. And when they practice music and when they do their homework, they require both executive control, applying their knowledge intentionally, and interpretation, which is more the default mode, generating ideas and evaluating them. So creativity, the upshot of all of this is that creativity is inside of us. It's not a noun. It's not a thing you can hold on to. It's a skill. It's an act, or not a skill really. It's an action. It's a way you do the things you do. In painting, creativity is the salient network. It's a combination of the skill we've developed, the techniques we've used, and the design principles that we understand, and the default, the dream mode of expressing what pleases us on a visceral level. Our creativity suffers when our salient network is out of balance. Too much technique and our paintings might feel perfect, but lifeless. Over focus on play without an understanding of design, we might really enjoy that process, but our paintings might look like a mess to anyone else who might see them. We need both work and play to communicate through our art. The work of art is easy. Follow the steps, log the brush miles, learn the techniques, and anyone can become a competent painter. It feels hard at the time because it is actually building skill, just like lifting weights or, exercising. But you can trust that time and practice will help you learn to manipulate paint, water, and brush. The really hard work is actually the play. It doesn't even make sense, does it? I mean, I guess because we're grown-ups, we're not very good at this whole play thing. If we want to create from the deep inner self, you have to remember that forest creature analogy. Stare too long and you will never see it. But if you step aside and look the other way, you can let it emerge. And then you jump on it and wrestle it to the ground. No, I'm just kidding. You don't want to do that. Nurture your delicate creature. Let it nose around in your painting process and get comfortable. Don't put your creativity to work. Don't wait for it to creep out and then, stab it with your brush. Let it be that wild, delicate thing and just welcome it into your process. I've kind of been talking in analogies here, but I want to get very specific. and actually I'm going to hold on to this until towards the end of the broadcast. I want to go to your questions. But then I am going to talk very specifically about some ways that you can let your inner self emerge, encourage the communication between your skill knowledge and your creativity heart. And I'm excited to share them with you. I really am. We have this big task we're taking on in Watercolor Mastery, and we're all in different places, which makes it really hard to teach something like this. And it really depends on you and what you're willing to put into it. And I just want you to think about that for a minute. And I have to breathe and take a drink. Yeah. Okay. Chris, you just commented, I've read about diffuse memory and focused memory. They're both important. That's another, I like that phrase actually, diffuse memory and focused memory. You know, we need that randomness of the dream thoughts, and then we need the intentionality, the knowledge that comes from our skill, what we've developed in skill. Okay, so I have some questions here that you posted in the Watercolor Mastery community. You can find the Watercolor Mastery community in fearlessartist.net. I've also made it very easy for you when the lessons roll out on April 12th for Watercolor Mastery, you will be able to link right up to, at the bottom of each lesson, there will be a link to the community where you can share your work for critique and for community support. And I wanted to talk, actually, the very first question I saw here was to do with, so I'm just rolling up checking my video quality here. Okay, so the very first question I had from Chris was regarding feedback, and will I be able to offer individual feedback or comments on the artwork we submit for our weekly assignments? How will we be assessed or given constructive feedback to help our learning process? Okay, so I know you'll understand when I say that I cannot comment on every piece of artwork that you upload to the community. I've tried to do that in the past, and it turned into this huge burden on me, and I didn't even want to get out of bed in the morning because I'd have 2,000 comments to read through and to react to during a given week, and I just can't do that kind of workload anymore. I have a family and a life, and you don't need it. That's the other thing. If your growth is dependent on feedback from me, that's not a mastery mindset. What I want to do for you is to equip you so that you can be your own best coach and teacher. That is what makes a watercolor master different from someone who's just getting started, a watercolor beginner, someone who's relying on that outside input. Yes, I am going to be present in the community. I'm going to be watching for artwork that works well as teaching tools. So if you're sharing a piece of artwork that is showcasing a technique I'd love the rest of the class to see, I'm going to comment. I'm going to highlight and bring that out. If you're showing some growth in your work that is really exciting, I'm going to comment on that too. I want to support you. But I also need to be free to let you interact as a class in the community. And so I hope that makes sense. I love being able to have this classroom community setting because I can address directly to the conversations that are going on in the group. So when I see that there's this theme developing among the class, we can address that in our weekly recaps and in our comments. And it really gives the course a fuller dimension by using this community to interact and share ideas. And it's a really good place to have an ideas exchange. So hopefully that makes sense. My goal is to give all of you feedback on at least one of the paintings you submit during the course, and hopefully more than that. Yeah, but I can't promise I'm going to comment on everything. Okay, regarding supplies, and we're going to just quickly move on to that because it's I think the question I get asked the most. There's this huge supply list here in the Watercolor Mastery course, and you're wondering, do I buy all of those things? I can't get them in my area. Why are we using all these non-watercolor materials? First of all, don't go shopping. Do go shopping if you don't have paper, because I want you to have a lot of paper on hand, really good watercolor paper. That will encourage your learning, give you the freedom to use use it freely enough that you're logging those brush miles and building skill. So you want to have good paper on hand. You want to have the paint colors that you're accustomed to. I wouldn't go out and buy all the colors that I'm using. I think one thing you're going to get out of the course is a really good look at some colors that maybe you haven't tried yet. So if you're seeing me use colors in my paintings that get you excited, then by all means go and buy them, but don't do it until you've actually seen them in action and know if you can use them. There are a couple, because some of our we have this balance between work and play in the lessons. We do some work, some of the skill building in our week, I think week 2 and 3, we do value and color theory. Week 4, we do composition. And then weeks 1, 5, and 6 are focused on play. So we've got kind of a half and half technique and creativity bias in our course, a little bit of both. And so in the creativity side of the course, that's where we kind of start using a diversity of materials. And I'm doing that because as a professional watercolor artist, I've been using watercolor for so long that it can feel pretty routine for me to just pull out paint and brushes. So when I start pulling out other things, inks, stencils, gouache, graphite, graphite paper. Actually, I have this graphite putty that I brought home in my suitcase from Arizona that I'm really excited to use. I bring in these other elements to help enliven my watercolor practice, to encourage that play. So what I would encourage you to do is to focus on adapting the lessons to suit what you have on hand and your own personal style. When it comes to colors, you can use whatever you want. And there are, how do I put this? There are tutorials in each week. There is full-length video demonstrations on how to paint various items. Drinking lots of water again. And those demonstrations are not there for you to lean on and to sit on and to try to paint the exact same scene that I'm painting. If you are a watercolor mastery student who's fairly new to watercolor, because I know I've got skill levels from all ranges, from just really getting started and wanting to grow in leaps and bounds, to people who've been painting for quite a number of years. And so if you're a little newer, you're going to be a lot more comfortable following a step-by-step tutorial, and that is okay. That is where you are at right now, and there's no shame in that. But you do not have to follow the demonstrations letter for letter, brush stroke for brush stroke. Doing so will build your technical skills, but if you want to build your creativity, you should be looking to take those lessons and tutorials and adapt them to your own reference photos and to your own subject matter and ideas. And I'll be talking more about how to do that. If that feels overwhelming to you, I will be sharing more about how to do that in each week's lesson assignments. Yeah, Caroline says, I don't have the Paraline Violet, Wisteria, Tiger's Eye Genuine, or Rose Madder Lake. I don't have Brusho crystals or Liquitex ink or brush tip markers or stencils or aqua bronze. Exactly. You do not have to, and I don't want to bankrupt anybody as you're buying supplies. So watch what I'm using, be inspired by it, and then the cool thing is that something in that tutorial will ring a little bell in your brain, and that's what I'm looking for. That's what you should be looking for, is when that little ding ding goes, oh, I could use such and such for this, or I could take that lesson and adapt it to what I have on hand. That is what I want you to be looking for and listening for. If you can learn how to listen to that little ding ding in your brain, you're going to get so much out of the course. If you have questions that I don't address here, please do feel free to ask them in the comments here. I'm not going to be sharing I'm not going to be sharing today how to use the community site. We might talk about that later in the week if we have time. It's pretty straightforward, and Robin's been amazing at creating help documents within our Watercolor Mastery, our fearlessartist.net website. Do take a look at the help documents, and you should be able to find your way around. Thank you so much for taking the time, Robin, to help get everybody acquainted with that site. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, another questions about palette knives, questions about the stencils listed. Really just use what you have. Regarding palette knives, I found mine at an art supply store and there were like 2 to choose from, so I just picked kind of a medium-sized one. I've seen people use plastic spoons, you know, that have a little bit of flexibility to them as well as an option if you don't have a palette knife. That would be another way to do it. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see here, further questions. Lindy asks, do you pre-shrink your arches paper before you tape it down? Do you air dry washes, or do I use a hair dryer? These are good questions, Lindy. Regarding watercolor paper, I'm of the opinion that I just want to start painting. I have not found it to make a dramatic difference if I stretch my paper. Stretching your paper just means you get it wet first. Usually they staple it or tape it to a painting board and let it dry, and it dries nice and smooth, and then they paint. I've never done that because I just want to start painting. Modern watercolor paper really doesn't need to be stretched. It's made so that you can just start painting, and if your painting tends to buckle a little bit as you're painting, that's one reason artists like to stretch. So if that buckling bothers you, then you might want to consider stretching your paper. For small paintings, should be unnecessary. The only time I ever stretch is when I'm working with really big paintings and I need to be able to manipulate the paper and move it around, and it's just too big to manage. So yeah, so I don't stretch. The other thing I don't do is I don't use a hairdryer. I don't like to use a hairdryer because it inhibits the paint from doing its thing. When you blow dry your paper to get onto that next stage, you miss out on the beautiful organic beauty that can happen when you let the paint mingle and move on its own. As long as the paper is wet, the paint is going to continue to move and do beautiful things. I'm really loving this this wash that I made yesterday, and a lot of that happened without the interference of my brush. Once I put the paint down, it gets to move and dry and mix organically. And so by using a hairdryer, you kind of limit that, and you don't give it the opportunity to do that. The other thing about using a hairdryer is you don't let your brain rest. And I was just talking about that default mode where we get to daydream and we get to let ideas swim around. So when your paint and paper are drying, you get to, that's when your brain goes to work. And so if you're not actually painting, your mind is still doing the work of painting. It's still mulling over ideas and planning that next step. So that's my own feeling. My own personal preference is I need to know, I need to let my brain catch up to where my painting has progressed to, and I want to let the paint mix and flow and do its beautiful thing. Okay, further questions, and these are questions to do with the course itself. Here we go. Brenda says, the actual course material, will it still be available to us after the course ends? Yes. You get lifetime access to Watercolor Mastery by signing up for the course. That means that as long as the course exists on the internet, which should be forever, as long as I can make that happen, you'll have access to those lessons and be able to watch them over and over again. You'll also get the advantage of the small updates that I do on a semi-annual basis. If I decide at some point to like drastically revamp Watercolor Mastery, I would do that as a new course. But at this point, anybody who signed up like last year will be benefiting from some of the video tweaks that I'm doing in the next few weeks. And you can log in at learn.angelafair.com and access your watercolor mastery lessons and watch them over and over again. There's no limit to how many times you can watch them, and you'll get a lot out of the lessons if you're willing to go through it more than once. Okay. Oh, Paint Lady says, that's why I often do multiple washes. We're talking about letting your brain catch up and letting your paint dry organically. Paint Lady says, I often do multiple washes or have multiple pieces to work on, so I give time to walk away from one and let it do what it does, but still keep playing. Yes, and most intuitive loose painters are working in that same method. Nancy Hillis talks about just doing lots of starts and start a whole bunch of paintings and then let them develop. And then when you're in that starting mindset, then you progress on to the next step. And I really phrased that badly, but we're moving on. Questions. Caroline asks, what date does the class actually end? I'm planning a trip in late May, and I'm actually going to look that up because I don't have it written down, but I have it in my calendar, I believe. Watercolor Mastery Week 6 recap, which will be our very last video, is May 23rd. So that will be kind of when we're wrapping up here. That doesn't mean anything goes away, except for we won't have the weekly recaps. The community will actually remain open through June. So you can keep that in mind. Robin, I got the dates right on that, right? We're all the Watercolor Mastery students, I believe you get access right until the end of June. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Robin. Okay, Sonali asks, and this is a good question, Sonali. I'm a returning student. Will there be a different way this class will work for those returning students? Will we get new material, or do we just use the last class material and watch the recap videos? You're now based in India, Sonali. You've moved away. Hoping you're settling in there in India. I'm glad you're going through Watercolor Mastery again. Okay, regarding returning students, much of the video content, the lessons will be familiar to you. We are adding some different elements that are new this time around. One thing I'll be doing is giving you learning streams based on your skill level and based on your subject interests. So each week when you get your lesson link and there's little pep talks that go along with that, I'll also be including an assignment with different options for whether you're a fairly early beginner watercolor mastery students or a more advanced version of the assignment, and also suggestions for your interests. If you're a subject themed painter, if you like painting landscapes and florals, how you might interpret the lesson, or if you're an abstract painter, how you can take the lesson in a direction that works for the subject matter you're interested in. Thank you, Robin. Robin says, Mastery students have access to the community until June 30th. Thank you. That's what I thought it was. Jan, I had to share your comment. She says, my excitement is building and I've been prepping for prep week by garden planting, cleaning, food prepping, etc. So I'm freer to paint, learn, and paint. I love hearing that. That's a really good way to be getting ready, is just making space in your life so that you have time to paint. The other thing you should be aware of is prep week gets us in the mindset. Mindset is a big part of this. So it's not just about, oh, do I have time to paint today? But it's, where are my thoughts going? How am I thinking about what I need to learn and what I want to do when I next step into the studio? And how am I learning from what I did yesterday? So that's that. Hillary says, the class is 6 weeks long. Isn't it the last class should fall on May 17th? According to my calendar, let me think here. We have our first lesson on the 12th. Then we have recaps, and the recap is always on the last day of the course. So recap number 1's the 18th. And then we go right through to, yeah, I think I did that right. So then the very last day of the course. So So the week 6 lesson rolls out on the May 16th, May 17th, but the recap ends on May 23rd, if that makes sense. So that's actually the last day of kind of going over what we've learned. Okay, we've had a number of questions about brushes, and Deb, you were asking about Rosemary and Company. Rosemary and Company is a company out of the United Kingdom that makes their brushes by hand. They sell exclusively on their website, I believe. They might have some brushes for sale with stores in the UK. But as far as I know, they don't have any suppliers, distributors in North America. However, they have very reasonable shipping to North America. So if you're interested in their brushes, check out their website, Rosemary and Company. The dagger striper brush that I love to use is from Cheap Joe's Art Stuff. I'm told it's back ordered. They do have several sizes, and all of the sizes are really nice. And finally, oh, I had to share Beatrice's comment. And I think, unfortunately, my printer cut off the bottom part of it, so I'll have to improvise what you said, Beatrice. Beatrice says, I'm very excited to start the course for the second time. I can't tell you how much it helps me. Just like when you paint one subject a few times, you always learn so much. There are 3 ways to learn from this course, and this is what I wanted to share with you. There are 3 ways to learn from this course. One is from the Friday lessons, the recaps that we do at the end of the week. The other one is from Angela's very constructive and positive comments to our work, and I will be continuing to do those, just not necessarily on every painting. And third is from all the students, the way you guys interact and engage and collaborate with each other. So we learn so much just through, and those are all the community things. That doesn't even cover the lessons, which would be the 4th way, is actually going through the lessons and implementing the principles in the course. That's a lot of ways to learn. There's so much that we're going to cover in the next few weeks. And I'm so excited for you that you've invested in Watercolor Mastery. I know I've said it before, I'm saying it again. Doing this, giving is like this vote of confidence for who you are as an artist. And it's really, really valuable. Just that one decision alone makes a big difference in where you're going to go as a watercolor artist. Now, I promised you that I would get very specific about how to let your inner self emerge and let that creativity flow, how to let your little creativity wild creature out. Maybe it's a little bunny, maybe it's a lizard, I don't know. Somebody said they were imagining, no, that was their inner fear. They gave it a name so they could put it in the corner when it started to misbehave. But our inner creativity, that gentle, delicate creature that we need to coax out gently. I actually have a video up for it here on YouTube. There's my Friday lesson, just went live about half an hour ago. So once we finish up here, go check out youtube.com/Angela Fair, or just search up my name on YouTube here, and you'll be able to watch how to get over a creative block on my new video. But first, let's get really specific about how to let your inner self emerge. I really believe that you have to, in order to let your heart come out to play on your painting, you need to give yourself permission to be flawed. I'm a very goal-oriented person, but if I go to the studio thinking about getting that blank piece of paper and turning it into a masterpiece, I've built a fence that's going to trap my wild creature. It's not going to feel free. It's not going to do the things a wild creature does. Yes, I can come into the studio with a reference photo, and I can have a plan for what I want to paint, and I can make a competent painting with that plan in place. But if I want a painting that is deeply self-expressive, one that shows who I am as an artist, I won't be satisfied with competent. In order to paint from a deeper place, I need to be willing to paint without knowing where I'm going or what direction or where I'll end up. I need to be open to changing my plan if a new direction suggests itself, no matter how committed I feel to that original plan. I need to be willing to make mistakes and ruin paintings, and even ruin paintings, as I learn how to paint this thing in my way. And I need to let go of my timeline that wants to get it right today and right now. And this is going to be hard for you as we're doing a weekly course, and so you're going to want to get lesson 1 done before you move to lesson 2. But be willing to let go of that timeline and linger over a week's lessons that need longer to take hold. Be okay with that. I'm okay with that for you, so you can be okay with it too. And I want to be willing to even appear to waste time in exploring side avenues and rabbit trails that branch out from my original idea. So much amazing inspiration is revealed when we follow those little tangents, the rabbit trails, the digressions from where we originally planned to go. Our best discoveries on our Arizona road trip were when we took a wrong turn and ended up somewhere unexpected. And it happens that way in creativity too. And I want to accept that in this process of self-discovery, I might feel childish, I might feel regressed as an artist, I might feel lost or frustrated. I want to allow my feelings to exist without assuming that they're a judgment of my qualifications to paint. In Watercolor Mastery, we're taking on such a big task: how to paint with both skill and style in a way that's all your own. And I believe the key to this is using that combination of work and play to create our paintings and equip our painting toolbox. We will work with value, color theory, and design to understand the components that make a technically strong painting, but we're also going to spend a good deal of time getting alone with ourselves and working to let our creativity creatures exist in the wild. The exercises that feel like inefficient wastes of time are the ones that reveal the most who you are as an artist, and you cannot downplay the importance of letting your inner artist out, no matter how silly or shallow their interests seem to be. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the only silly, shallow artist out there, but sometimes when I'm painting to please myself, it just feels like I'm making art that's just like, what's the point? But this is what I like, and so I'm gonna do this fun, goofy, silly thing, and then I create something that is really me, and I have to be okay with that. And in fact, I don't know. We'll talk about more about that during the course. And I've rambled on already for far too long. Whoops. Yeah. So just wanting to thank you all for being here. Paint Lady says, aren't we all afraid of ruining a painting, and yet it will never get finished if we don't chance that misstep? Recently, and I've talked about this before, recently I realized I was holding back out of fear of overworking my paintings. We know that's the watercolorist's biggest curse, and so here I was leaving, and I like an unfinished look in my paintings, and yet I realized that if I was leaving my painting with that kind of unfinished feel because I was afraid of messing up, I really didn't, I really was letting fear overcome me. And so I needed to, I've actually set out and spent a lot of time intentionally overworking paintings as a way of combating that fear. So that's something to think about. Oh, Chris, a couple more questions, and and then we'll wrap up. Robin says, we have a question regarding what size paper do I want you to use? I know I've had other questions about this. Thanks for reminding me. I would suggest that you have a lot of different sizes of paper. I used to say, just use whatever you're comfortable with, but I think if you work with a number of different sizes from large to small, that you'll be more versatile as an artist. I know a lot of you are accustomed to painting maybe postcard size to 8 by 10 and not much bigger. Take the time to play on all different sizes of paper, and you'll be more versatile as an artist. And you'll feel more comfortable when you do want to go to a larger painting if you've worked in both sizes. So think about that. Chris asks, how often will we be expected to create a piece? Once a day, once a week? What I would encourage you to do is not to expect that you're going to complete a lot of paintings during the course. You're going to have some starts, you're going to have some that are halfway done, you're going to have some that you do get to finish and take to completion. I actually think a really good way to approach the course, and actually there was a question about that. Shelley was asking, she says, I have several reference photos I'd like to use with guidance. I've worked through some of the initial steps. Would this be the right place to explore developing them further? I'm thinking this would mean applying the week's lesson to painting from those photos. Yes, this is actually what I would encourage you to do is have some reference photos on hand. Yes, Lisa, but don't have too many. If you if you want to, and this is a really good way to approach the course, plan on being very focused on maybe a single subject during the time of the course. That means I'm laughing because you don't want to pick a picture you hate, obviously. So have several reference photos on hand. During the first week or two, play with those different reference photos and explore them. If you're wanting to be a representational painter, if you're painting from abstract, you might still want to have some photos to be your jumping off point. But when we find what I saw I think in the spring, I had one student who was working on a photo. It was a beautiful photo of floral, and she painted that probably a dozen times during the course, and a number of them looked exactly the same. You know, there were very small changes that really didn't make a big difference in the painting, and she just wasn't getting to where she wanted to get. And then all of a sudden the breakthrough happened, and it happened because she was willing to commit to that photo and paint it over and over again. So if you're willing to do that, if you have an image that you really love, stick with that and use it as your teaching tool. This course is very much about learning to teach yourself. And so having that instinct to say, you know what, this photo I could really get deep into, I would encourage you to do that, to take this time to do that. Release yourself from the pressure of finishing paintings. This is really about exploration, and you need to give yourself permission to leave things unfinished, to overwork your paintings, to even ruin them in the process of this discovery and learning. Gilly's Art asks types of paper recommended. I would really encourage you to use the best paper you can. 100% cotton watercolor paper. I like cold press, but use what you're comfortable with. But if you're wanting to paint more loosely, I'm on my second bottle of water now. If you're wanting to paint more loosely, I would encourage you to use really good paper. The paint will flow better on good paper. Len comments, I find the smaller paper I use, the less likely I am inclined to be loose and free. Even just moving to a smaller brush makes me become tighter. Not sure exactly why. Yes, definitely you're going to have a freer range of movement on larger paper. You're going to be less likely to be fussy if you're using a larger brush. However, sometimes our mindset goes, this is really expensive piece of paper. I can't use this big piece of paper because I don't want to, I can't make a mistake on this big piece of paper because it would cost so much. So you have to kind of find that balance between that fear of cost and that need to have a little space to move and be free. My opinion on Saunders watercolor paper, Saunders is a beautiful paper. If you get it in your area, feel free to use it. I like Arches, I like Fabriano, Winsor & Newton makes some good paper as well, although I think they have student grades, so you got to be careful of that. And I've been using these Blick Premier blocks, which are really nice if you have a Blick in your area. And I think I'm holding it up so that you can see it. And for loose painting, a hot press often isn't very friendly. So that's generally, I use cold press because it's really nice and all-purpose. Hot press doesn't always flow in the same way. You'll see more watermarks and so forth. People keep telling me I should try hot press because I'll really like it. I just don't. That's just where I'm at right now, and it might become my best friend next year. You just never know. Okay, so I think we're kind of winding down. Questions are fading away. I love hearing your comments here. If you want to continue the conversation, you can head over to fearlessartist.net, where our community is, and share any thoughts that you had inspired by this video. And we will be talking next week. I actually have, I'm working on a clip from a lecture in my Arizona workshop that I want to share just with my Watercolor Mastery students. So I'll be posting that early next week. Some insights into how to create a kind of theme and rhythm in your paintings. And as you work, or as you think about getting into Watercolor Mastery this week, spend a lot of time just giving yourself permission to be where you're at. It's a good place to be, and you know, you're going to, every time you paint, you're going to move a little further on your artistic journey. And why not enjoy the process and the ride? We really want to love watercolor, no matter where you're at, because you're never going to really quite feel like you've arrived. There's always more to learn. Deb's asking if I have homework for you. Not really. Today we're just going, I would encourage you just to make sure you have paper on hand. Have your supplies in order and some space to work. The other thing I want to mention is then just all the thoughts just flew out of my head. I think I hear the school bus coming. Oh, what was it? Darn it. I don't have homework for you. Aside from just working on mindset, thinking about being ready to give yourself permission to learn in your way. When I realized that I was learning, no matter that I wasn't learning in the traditional, very structured way that so many artists seem to encourage, it was very freeing to just be able to kind of muddle along in my own way and see growth happening. And then realizing that all artists feel like we're muddling along trying to figure things out. That was another element that just I needed to make peace with in my artistic journey, and I would encourage you to do the same. Check out my other recent video here, and I'll try to throw it in the description below the video. I just posted a little demonstration of how I get unblocked creatively when I haven't painted in a while. And if you have time to paint this week, do it for fun. Do it for the enjoyment of it. Oh, one last question. Will the lesson always be this hour of the day? Angelique asks. Angelique, I'm actually an hour behind, I think, what I'd like to do for our weekly recap. I am recording them in, as Robin says, I am recording them, so you don't have to be here live to watch the video. That's important to remember. I like hearing your questions, but you can ask them in the community and I can answer them on the video if you're not able to be here to watch the live broadcast. So the rest of the questions that you might have, or questions that popped up into your mind as you're watching the video, I can never find my mouse on here. You can post them in the community. I will answer them. We'll be doing more videos like this. And yeah, just thank you for being here. I think I'm done talking. Have a great day. I will see you next week. Enjoy your weekend. Make some time to paint for fun. That's your assignment. Bye for now.